All right, welcome to today's show. I'm going to talk about MicroStrategy today, and I'm going to talk about one. I'm going to share my thoughts on MicroStrategy and talk a little bit about the returns last year in 2024, where MicroStrategy did 359% versus Bitcoin doing 121%. I'm also going to talk about what MicroStrategy is doing and why they are going up faster than Bitcoin. And then third, I'm going to compare MicroStrategy today to an Apple in terms of a hypothetical valuation of why I think MicroStrategy is actually undervalued. So if you're just joining me or first time you're tuning in here, my goal is to make the money game really simple, to put it in a third grade level. That's how I understand things. And so I want to make it very, very simple today. And I'm actually going to give you a very specific, very, very simple example today to actually show you specifically what is MicroStrategy doing in a very simple mathematical concept today. Okay. Because the one question I keep that I see recurring as I watch other videos on MicroStrategy or I watch people's comments is like, what actually is this thing? And I think the big question people have is, why is MicroStrategy going up faster than Bitcoin? And I'm going to break it down in a simple concept with simple math today so that we can all understand it together. Okay. And this is not financial advice. I'm not giving investment advice, tax advice, legal advice today at all. I'm just simply sharing some knowledge because I believe that when someone has knowledge in a subject, they have greater control over the subject or area, and they have greater ability to make the right decisions. So if we can understand what MicroStrategy is doing together, if we can understand Bitcoin together, and we can understand it in super, super simple terms, then I know myself as an investor, when I have knowledge about something, I can make the right choices about it. So, and then when things get crazy, like there's big declines in Bitcoin or big declines in MicroStrategy, because we have knowledge, we can make the right decisions, right? So some people might be getting very fearful right now of like MicroStrategy dropped and what do I do? And sometimes people sell when they get afraid. And so when one has knowledge of the area of what MicroStrategy is doing, then we don't get caught up in the fear and we make logical decisions based on what we think is going to happen from our own point of view. So I'm simply here to give you my own point of view today. And my goal is to help you by sharing some knowledge that I have on the subject, and you come up with your own point of view. Everybody's welcome to share what they think. You can put it in the comments, and I'm happy to two-way communicate with you on it. But I'm going to give you the basic understanding that I have of MicroStrategy. Number one, I bought in early in 2024. In fact, to be technical and specific, I bought my first shares of MicroStrategy in 2020. Okay. So I've been following Michael Saylor and watching his videos and studying this since 2020. I've gotten heavy into this in the last year. And I've also done extremely well with MicroStrategy. I've done extremely well with Bitcoin because I bought my first Bitcoin back in 2018. All right. So what I share today is just basic concepts because I want to make the money game super simple. And I want to share it in concepts that anybody could understand. Like if I was explaining it to my dad or even my stepdad, who we had him buy Bitcoin back in 2020. My brother and I orange pilled him on it. And my stepdad bought Bitcoin. And at 80 years old, he didn't understand anything about it. But we were able to communicate in a simple way to where he bought it. So my goal is not to influence you to buy anything or give you tax or investment advice. My goal is just to share some knowledge and some things that I've discovered along the way of investing in MicroStrategy and Bitcoin. So the big question is why did MicroStrategy go up last year by 359%? It was looking like MicroStrategy was going to be over 400% last year. But we had drops, obviously, towards the end of the year, and MicroStrategy went down. And so there was a 359% gain. So this actually puts into context like what actually happened with MicroStrategy, because it's easy to look at like December and be like, oh my God, MicroStrategy tanked, and oh my God, like it's going to hell and we're in a bear market, and everybody's entitled to their point of view. But if you look at the data, last year MicroStrategy did 359%. All right. So that's what it did. Bitcoin last year did 121%. So when you actually look at MicroStrategy compared to Bitcoin, Bitcoin went up 121% last year. MicroStrategy 359. It's almost a 3x. And so the question is like, will it continue? will MicroStrategy do a 3x from where it is now? And will Bitcoin double from where it is now? That's what it did last year. And who knows, right? I have my own personal point of view on it. I think MicroStrategy will triple from here. In fact, I have some specific numbers that I think it's going to hit. And I'm going to share why I think it's going to actually triple. And again, not investment advice, not telling you to buy the stock at all now. My friends call me all the time. They're like, what should I do? Should I buy now? Do you think it's going to go lower? What's going to happen? And I'm like, I can't tell you when to get into something. But all I can tell you is like, the high point of MicroStrategy last year was 530. So after hours, it was trading at 530. Now it closed on Friday at 289. So do you think it's going to get back above 530 in 2025? You have to make your own decision. So my point is to give you some knowledge on it. And I personally, for my own decisions based on my current data, I believe we're going to see a 3x from here on MicroStrategy. Okay, so I'm going to lay out why are they going up so fast, and why they're not a Ponzi scheme, or it's not some fly-by-night thing, or it's not some kamikaze move that Michael Saylor's doing. What's up, Dang? How you doing, man? You're bullish on MicroStrategy. You bought Leaps in October. Love it, man. Good to see you there. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat. Again, listen, I'm not claiming to know everything. I've done a lot of research into this. I'm just going to share my point of view, and I've done very well in Bitcoin. I've done very well in MicroStrategy. So I have some knowledge on it. So here it goes, okay? So the first thing that we want to look at is let's just do like a simple example here, okay? And like the good old like pad, right? Like sketch it out. Sometimes if you're listening to something and you don't sketch it out, it's like I'm trying to keep this in my head. I'm trying to do math. I'm getting confused. No, let's just sketch it out like we're in third grade here on a sheet of paper and do some addition, right? And let's do it in a very simple way, right? Why did MicroStrategy go up 3x to that of Bitcoin? Now, I own both, guys, so I'm not saying MicroStrategy is better than Bitcoin. I'm just looking at the facts, okay? And there's a very simple explanation of why it went up. It's very simple, and I'm going to walk you through it today. And I understand it. You might already understand it. Maybe you'll understand more today, but let's make it simple. So we take a pen and piece of paper and we write down, okay? So let's say I or you go and buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, okay? This is the example of how MicroStrategy went up 3x last year and why I believe it will continue to go up. So let's go say, take a pen, piece of paper, write down, I buy $100 worth of Bitcoin, right? And over a year, my $100 of Bitcoin doubles and goes to $200. Okay, everybody tracking me. If you have any questions or comments or want to check the math, you can put it in the chat box and we can check the math on this together. I'm just giving a concept of why MicroStrategy 3x'd last year. It did 359%. Bitcoin did 121% last year. Why did MicroStrategy 3x? If you're just joining us, take out a pen and a piece of paper because I'm going to make a very simple explanation of what happened. And all this talk about how MicroStrategies, they're borrowing money, they're buying Bitcoin, they're doing this, they're buying Bitcoin, and it creates maybe some confusion. So here it is simply laid out, okay? So example of take $100 and I go buy Bitcoin. And my Bitcoin doubles over a year's period. What do I now have in Bitcoin? I now have $200. Yeah? Okay. So me as an individual, I put $100 in Bitcoin, doubles, I got $200. Again, I'm making the money game super simple here because I think it needs to be simple. What's up, John? How you doing, bro? So everybody a pen and piece of paper because this is going to explain what MicroStrategy is doing in super, super simple terms. If you have any confusion on it, I think this will clear it up. Okay. So I invest $100 as an individual. I can't do what MicroStrategy is doing per se. So let's say as an individual, I take $100, I put it in Bitcoin. I got $200. Now let's say MicroStrategy, let's say they take $100, right? And MicroStrategy puts $100 into Bitcoin and it doubles. It now becomes what? $200, right? Everybody tracking so far? So you're like, okay, this is dumb, stupid math. What's your point, Ted? My point is simple. I take $100, I put it in Bitcoin, and it doubles, I make 200 bucks. MicroStrategy puts 100 bucks in Bitcoin and it doubles and they make 200 bucks, right? Or they make 100 bucks, so they have 200. I put in 100, doubles, I get 200. They put 100 in, doubles, now they have 200, right? Simple. But what are they doing that's totally different that I cannot do and you cannot do right now? All right? What they're doing is they're going out and they're borrowing money to buy Bitcoin. So let's say MicroStrategy goes out and they borrow $100, right? They borrow 100 bucks. Everybody write it down. And now borrowing that 100 bucks, their Bitcoin doubles. Now they have another 200. Make sense? So remember, they put 100 bucks of their own money, and this is just a concept to follow along, because you remember back in 2020, MicroStrategy took a lot of their own money and they put it into Bitcoin. So this is just a concept, right? So I put 100 bucks into Bitcoin, it doubles, I make 200. MicroStrategy takes $100 of their own money and puts into Bitcoin, it doubles, they have 200. Apples to apples. But now, that's not what they're doing fully. Okay? The majority of what they're doing is the second thing is they're borrowing. So they go out and they borrow 100 bucks. And they put it in, and now that 100 bucks doubles, and now they have another 200. So MicroStrategy has 200 in, and they now have 400, right? They have $200 in, Bitcoin doubles, they now have $400, right? Okay. I, as an individual, put in 100 bucks, it doubles. I make 200, right? Could I borrow? Yeah, right? Can I borrow at 0% interest like they're borrowing most of the time? No. Okay. So they're borrowing money. They go borrow 100 bucks, they double that. And then the third thing that they're doing, right, is they are issuing stock, right? And in a very simple way, like to put it in simple terms, because I like simple, it's like they go like, here's a piece of paper of MicroStrategy. Like, here's my paper, right? Right? They print some paper. They go, here it is. Buy some of my MicroStrategy paper, my stock, right? You give them money. So let's say you give them 100 bucks, right? You buy 100 bucks of their paper stock, right? They take that 100 bucks of your money and that doubles and they make another $200. Everybody tracking this? Okay, I'm going to recap this again. How much, somebody in the chat box, how much do they have, right? In this very simple example, how much does MicroStrategy have when Bitcoin doubles based on their strategy? And how much do I have? What's the answer to that? Okay. It's simple. Okay. I'm going to go through it one more time for everybody else just joining us because it's simple but powerful. MicroStrategy at the end of the day has $600 worth of Bitcoin. I have 200. They got a 3x to what I have as an individual. Does this make sense? Again, I'm going to recap it one more time. All right. One more time, because this is simple but super powerful. We're figuring out why is MicroStrategy going up faster than Bitcoin? Why? In very, very simple terms that we can sit down with a 5-year-old or 6-year-old and they could understand, right? So again, here it is again. I put $100 into Bitcoin, me as an individual, right? It doubles. I make 200 bucks over a year. I got 200 bucks, right? MicroStrategy, let's say they put 100 bucks into Bitcoin of their own money. They now have $200 worth of Bitcoin if it doubles. But now they go out and they borrow another $100. Okay? They borrow another $100. So now they have another $100 into Bitcoin and it doubles and they have another $200. So they put in 100, doubled to 200. They borrowed 100. Doubled to 200. They now got 400 Bitcoin. I put in my own money. I still only got 200 Bitcoin on a double, right? They just went out and borrowed another 100 bucks and they got a double. Now they got 400 Bitcoin. I got 200 Bitcoin. Make sense? Okay. And then finally, because they're a public company, they go, hey, here's some MicroStrategy paper stock, right? And they're like, hey, Ted, here's some paper stock. Buy my stock. Give me $100. Now they just took my $100, right? Other people's money, my $100, and they put it in Bitcoin and it doubled and they got another $200 worth of Bitcoin. So MicroStrategy now has $600 worth of Bitcoin. And me as an individual, I put in my 100. All I got is my 100, right? But they got their 100, plus they borrowed 100 from somebody, plus they got you investing $100 in their stock. Now they got $300 that turned into $600. I got $100 that turned into $200. Does this make sense? So this whole concept, when people are talking about like leverage, right? Like, let's just make it simple. They're borrowing money, guys. That's it. Simple. Right? It's like, what a genius idea, right? Simple. I mean, it's a concept that's been going on for a long, long time. Just nobody's done it with Bitcoin, right? So everybody tracking so far, right? It's a very simple example. My goal is to make the money game really simple. That's my goal. It can get super complex. We're making it simple here, right? So now we look at like, wow, that's amazing, right? If I as an individual can put $100 into Bitcoin and get 200 because it doubles, MicroStrategy can put 100 of their own money into Bitcoin, borrow another 100, okay, and also issue some stock and get another 100. And so now they got $300 and they make 600. I put 100 in, I make 200 in terms of Bitcoin. That's crazy, right? But it's very simple and it's very logical. So when we're wondering, like, how are they going up more than Bitcoin is going up? It's simple, right? So now let's just break it down to their Bitcoin. Let's call it their Bitcoin treasure chest, right? So let's just break it down to their Bitcoin treasure chest. Simple, right? So MicroStrategy has Bitcoin right now, right? Number one, they got a Bitcoin treasure chest, right? If that doubles, they just doubled their treasure chest, right? Number two, MicroStrategy's like, I want to fill my treasure chest, man, right? And everybody loves MicroStrategy's treasure chest, or at least people who believe in them do, because why? They're like, they hold Bitcoin, right? The most pure asset on the face of the planet. So everybody loves the treasure chest. So they're like, you know what, MicroStrategy, we're gonna loan you some money to fill up your treasure chest with Bitcoin. It's called borrowing money. They borrow it. And they fill up their treasure chest with more Bitcoin. So it's not just the Bitcoin they're sitting on, right? But now they're loading more Bitcoin into their treasure chest. Why? Because they're borrowing money to load their treasure chest with Bitcoin. Make sense? Point number two. And then point number three is like, people are like, man, this is a smart strategy, right? This company, MicroStrategy, is brilliant. Like, they own Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? Let's say in their treasure chest, right? For a simple analogy. That's going up. People come along, they're like, I'll loan you money. Like, look at MicroStrategy's returns. So other investors come along, they're like, I'll loan you money. They fill up their treasure chest more. And then the third thing is, people like you and me are like, I'll buy the stock. I'll give you some money. Buy your paper stock, because I believe that it's going to go up because you're holding on to Bitcoin. And so now they're taking the money we give them for their paper and they are investing it into Bitcoin. So we now have a simple three ways, okay? This is called, I think in the complex terms, leverage. But let's just call it what it is. They got a treasure chest of Bitcoin. They borrow some money. They fill it up. They issue some stock. People give them more money for that. They fill it up more. So essentially, their value of what they're doing is going up in three ways. Pretty simple, right? Pretty simple. So the question then becomes, wow, it's like, how are they going up more than Bitcoin? That's how. Okay. And again, if you're just joining us, going back to this very simple concept, I'm going to go through it one more time because I think it's so important to get the basic understanding of what they're doing. This is just a concept. This is not real numbers, but this is the concept of actually what's happening. So again, if I'm an individual and I put $100 in Bitcoin, right? Okay, because this answers the question, why Bitcoin went up 121% last year, MicroStrategy 359, 3x. Why? Right, simple concept. I'm an individual. I go buy $100 worth of Bitcoin. It doubles. I got 200, man, 200. So at the end of the day, I got 200. I'm happy. I double my money, right? MicroStrategy, they already got some Bitcoin, right? So their Bitcoin doubles. So say they have $100 of Bitcoin, it goes to $200. They now have 200 also. They're like, we want to fill the Bitcoin treasure chest. Let's go borrow another $100. They borrow another $100. Bitcoin doubles. Now they got another 200. And then they're like, you know what? People love our stock. Let's issue some more stock, meaning I give you some paper. Let's say I'm Microstrategy. I give you some paper called stock. You give me some money for it. I take your $100 that you give me. I buy more Bitcoin. So if they're sitting on a lot of Bitcoin because they bought it way earlier than other corporations and people in 2020, if they're borrowing money to fill their treasure chest with Bitcoin, and then they're issuing stock to put that extra $100, right? That's the concept I'm using, to put another $100 in their treasure chest, they got 3 ways that they're going up. Make sense? Okay, so now we take a look at this and we go, of course it makes sense. They have multiple ways to make their treasure chest bigger. If you and I had multiple ways to make our treasure chest of Bitcoin bigger, our Bitcoin stack would be going up higher. Yeah. So because they are a publicly traded company and they can issue stock, people will give them money, they buy Bitcoin. Because they have lots of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, the most out of any corporation in the world, people will give them money and loan them money and say, hey, I'll loan you some money. Here's some money. They take it, they buy Bitcoin. And then they're just sitting on their Bitcoin. And the strategy is we're never going to sell our Bitcoin. And they're just holding the Bitcoin and they're watching it go up. So here's the concept that I think, and I'm going to give you a metaphor comparing it to the dollar and comparing how the US prints dollar bills. And then I'm going to give you an analogy of how MicroStrategy prints MicroStrategy stock. Okay. And you tell me what you're going to trust in more or what you're going to have more confidence in. Okay. So, and dang, you're right, man. There is no theoretical limit to how much Bitcoin they can acquire on a per share basis. Right. So thanks for the comment on that. Okay. And you too, Carlos. So let's just look at this, right? So let's just look at what the US is doing. And this is, again, I'm going concept here. You should fact check everything that I say. I'm just going into theory. I'm making things simple. Fact check things, look at data. If I'm wrong on something, I'll always, belly up to the bar and be like, hey, I was incorrect. And I always welcome new data and welcome new points of view, okay? So now we look at what the US is doing, right? So we look at the concept of printing money, or like people look at MicroStrategy, or like, how can they just issue more stock or print more paper of stock, right? How can they do that? So let's look at it, right? And in fact, if you watch one of Michael Saylor's videos that he did recently, who's the founder of MicroStrategy, he actually talks about it's kind of like MicroStrategy's issuing their own currency, just like the US issues their own currency. They print money, right? MicroStrategy's printing paper and being like, buy my stock. So they print more paper and they're like, buy my stock. But why, when MicroStrategy prints more paper, is it better and good for the shareholders versus why, when the US prints more paper, is it bad for those of us that hold the dollar? Does this make sense? Okay. So let's just look at this for a second, right? MicroStrategy prints more paper for us to buy stock. And why is that good long-term for the shareholders like us? And then when the US prints more money, or prints more money being the dollar, why is it bad for us? This is an interesting concept to look at. So let's take a look, okay? Right? So, because this is one of the ways that MicroStrategy fills their treasure chest, right? Again, they bought some Bitcoin with their own money. Bitcoin goes up. They borrow a lot of money. And when they borrow money, they buy more Bitcoin. So they fill their treasure chest with more Bitcoin. And then they print paper, right? They're like, here's some MicroStrategy stock, right? And give me money for my stock. And they take your money and they buy more Bitcoin. Yeah. So why, when they're issuing stock, is it actually beneficial? And over the long term, does it make sense to where those of us who hold and own MicroStrategy, is it accretive for us? Meaning it's good for us, it's going to go up in value, okay? That assumes that MicroStrategy goes up in value and Bitcoin goes up in value. If it all crashes down, then we lose everything, right? And there's always the side of that too. So here we go, right? So the US prints money versus MicroStrategy prints their stock. What's the difference? US has been printing more of their paper or money since the beginning of the dollar. All right. So every year when the US prints more money, which on average over the last 100 years, they print about 7% more money. Okay. So We got the US printing dollars, yeah? And when there's like, imagine I did this yesterday, I'm going to go through it again. Imagine there's a pizza pie. That's the money supply, right? Okay. You got a pizza pie, right? And the US decides that they're going to print more supply of the pie. They're going to make more pie, which they do every year. All right. In a good year, they're printing 7% more. During COVID, they were printing 14, 15% per year. All right. So in a good year, they're printing 7% more. But if you got this whole pie of money and all of a sudden they print more money and the pie gets bigger, but your slice stays the same, then that's not good. Your slice of the money is worth less. Make sense? Okay. Because we know that over time, the dollar is not going up. We know that if you hold the dollar, that over about a 100-year period, you'll lose 97% of your value. But here's what MicroStrategy is doing, and here's why it's different. MicroStrategy is printing paper stock, right? They're like, here's some paper stock, buy my stock. But instead of taking your money, right, and putting it into something that's going to lose, right, they're taking your money and they're buying Bitcoin. And the idea is that Bitcoin is going to go up in value over time. All right, that's the idea. So when they're taking your money to buy more Bitcoin and they keep filling their treasure chest with Bitcoin, the idea is if you hold the stock and MicroStrategy continues to go up over time because Bitcoin's going up over time, that you win. And so by them printing more, some people say, wow, like the pie of MicroStrategy is getting bigger. So if I own a slice of MicroStrategy and the pie is getting bigger, the value of my MicroStrategy slice is getting less. Okay. Now that would be true in the case of the dollar, but that is hypothetically not true for those of us who buy MicroStrategy because Bitcoin is going up at a higher rate per year. And because Bitcoin, there's a fixed supply of Bitcoin. The concept of Bitcoin, of why people buy it, is because it's a fixed supply, because it's scarce, because it's finite, because there will only be 21 million Bitcoin ever. The value of Bitcoin is going to continue to go up over time, which means that MicroStrategy stock over a long period of time will continue to go up. So by them issuing more paper to buy more Bitcoin, the value is not going down for us in the long term. The idea is that the value is going to continue to go up because Bitcoin might go up at 30% per year, 40% per year, 50% per year, 60% per year. But let's take Michael Saylor's base case where he believes that Bitcoin is going to go up on average of 29% per year. And I think that is a logical hypothesis, idea, call it a speculation, you could call it a prediction, because, you know, the S&P 500 index has gone up on average 14% per year. So to say that Bitcoin on average over the long term could go up at 29% per year, it makes sense that by printing more MicroStrategy stock and taking it and investing our money into Bitcoin, by borrowing money and putting it into Bitcoin and filling their treasure chest even more, that over time, MicroStrategy stock and their paper will continue to go up, 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 up. Now, the flip side of that is it's super freaking volatile. So if you were watching what I said yesterday, the MicroStrategy could go up 50% and it go down 50%. MicroStrategy could go up 300%, it could go down 150%. MicroStrategy could go up 350% and it could go down 350%. So that's what you're dealing with here. But if you look at what they're doing, MicroStrategy has a very sound strategy. And to recap this, it's very simple. Comparing what they're doing to what I might be doing or what you might be doing. Back to the original example. I take $100, I buy Bitcoin and it doubles, I got $200. That's me as an individual. MicroStrategy takes $100, they buy Bitcoin, it doubles, they got $200. MicroStrategy goes out and borrows $100. They buy more Bitcoin. It doubles. They now have $200 more. MicroStrategy issues stock to you or me. They take the money that we pay. Let's say I pay $100 for the stock. They take that $100. It doubles. They have 200 additional bucks. So 100 to 200 is 200, another 100 to 200 is 400, another 100 to 200 is 600. So they got $600 as a corporation using the strategy. I put in $100 into Bitcoin, I got 200. That's how they're doing it. It's simple. Okay. Now, if you wanted to put on another layer of this, it could get super interesting here. To put in another layer to go like, how should MicroStrategy really be valued? Okay. So let's just kind of flush this out, right? Again, this is just a hypothetical concept because they're not an Apple or they're not a Google, and they don't have earnings on an annual basis from their Bitcoin, right? They have a yield, which is basically Bitcoin grows, right? So Bitcoin goes up by a certain amount. The growth rate of Bitcoin is basically what the yield is, okay? And so an analogy on that would be like, while let's say a company every day they sell apples, right? Well, every day a company sells their product of apples, they earn money, right? Traditional company. And so they sell a lot of apples throughout the year, they earn a lot of money. MicroStrategy, they're not selling apples. They're not selling something on a daily basis. They're not earning something on a daily basis. They're kind of owning Bitcoin. And the analogy would be like a fine piece of art, like a beautiful painting of art that you believe is going to go up and appreciate over time. So while they're not earning money on a daily basis on it, and they're not reporting earnings and going, oh, wow, like my Bitcoin just earned XYZ today, they're holding this beautiful asset. I'm using the analogy of like a piece of art, and that's appreciating over time. So when Michael Saylor uses the word like Bitcoin yield, he's basically just saying what the Bitcoin that they hold grows at per year. What percentage does it grow at per year? And when he's saying that, like last year it was 74%, all he's saying is after like the expenses, meaning like MicroStrategy borrows money to invest in Bitcoin. So there's expenses to that, right? So after their expenses on it, money that they borrow, stock that they issue, the Bitcoin that they hold has gone up by 74% last year. Okay. So the Bitcoin has grown by 74%. So when you look at that, like they're beautiful art, as I'm using the analogy, like this piece of art that they hold, this wonderful thing. It's not earning anything. It's not like they're selling products every day. They're not selling an iPhone. They're not selling a computer. They're not selling widgets. They're not selling apples. They're not selling stuff like a normal company. But you can't deny that there is value because this beautiful piece of art that they have is going up last year by 74%. Okay. So it's appreciating in value. So there is value to that. And we hypothetically, like you could say that MicroStrategy should be worth more because this beautiful piece of art that they're holding that goes up in value every single year, or on average over 4 years, it goes up. You could say that this beautiful piece of art that they're holding makes their company even more valuable. So looking at that, let's just do like a, no pun intended, but let's just do apples to apples comparison on this in just like a hypothetical, really simple concept. Okay. Somebody's just saying, it really depends on whether Bitcoin goes up or not. Yeah, for sure. If Bitcoin were to go down, obviously it's going to affect the price of MicroStrategy. So good point on that, Casey. Jim says issuing more and more paper describing a pyramid scheme. Yeah. So Jim, I totally get what you're saying. It's actually not a pyramid scheme. If you look into it, it's not. So it's not a Ponzi scheme. It's not a pyramid scheme. So, but good point to bring it up. Casey says MicroStrategy is a leverage play on Bitcoin. Absolutely. So let's just look at an example here. And I'm just mocking this up. I'm not saying that any analysts are valuing MicroStrategy based on this, but I am saying that one, they borrow money to buy Bitcoin and they fill their treasure chest. Number two, they issue stock. They take that money, they buy more Bitcoin, they fill their treasure chest. And I'm saying number three, what is the company's value worth over time? And in the beginning, I was talking about, hey, Bitcoin went up 121% and MicroStrategy went up 359%. Why? So in those examples I gave, it explains the hypothesis of why, right? So the next thing to look at, which I think has merit to it, and we can debate this and give different points of view all we want on it, because we can leave it up to an analyst to go in and say, what is the true value of MicroStrategy? But here's how kind of I'm looking at it. Let me know your thoughts on this, right? So if at the end of the year, Apple sells a whole bunch of iPhones, right? And if you look at Apple last year, go fact check this, but they were worth 41x their earnings. So if you were to value Apple based on their earnings last year, they'd be valued at a 41x of their earnings. Okay. So when you look at standard companies, my friends and I talk about software companies because I own a software company as well. And so we're talking about it the other day and we're like, wow, so if we earned XYZ in a year on our software company, what multiple could we get on it if we sold it? Would it be worth 10x the money that is earned in a year? Would it be worth 20x? Would it be worth 30x, right? Now, when you look at Apple, they are based on their earnings 41x multiple. Okay. So, and if you look back in 2023, at the end of 2023, they were 29x. So as you start to look at companies and how they're valued, and Apple being a 41x and 2 years ago being a 29x, we could then look at MicroStrategy being a public company and go, well, what should their valuation be? And because they don't have actual earnings, right? We're not going to value it based on earnings because they don't have it. But you could make a case to say that, wow, they hold all this Bitcoin in their treasure chest. The Bitcoin's going up by value every year. And then if you looked at it over a 4, 5, 8 year time horizon, you could simply say, wow, okay, MicroStrategy is going up by X every single year because of the Bitcoin that they hold. So what should the true value of the company be? And I think you can make a case to look at it and go, wow, like Apple is valued at a 41x. MicroStrategy should be valued at some X, right? I don't know if it's 41x. I don't know if it's a 20x. I don't know if it's a 10x. But in looking at that, there is merit to the fact that they hold Bitcoin in their treasure chest and that's going up every single year on average. Now, there are years where Bitcoin goes down. We know that. But over a 4-year time horizon, it's going up. So if you looked at it and go, hey, MicroStrategy is going up and their Bitcoin holdings are going up on average 30% per year. And you go, how do we put a value on this company? So I look at that as kind of like the third leg to say that it is undervalued and to say that it is worth more than what the current stock price is from my point of view. So as an investor, from my point of view, I'm holding on to MicroStrategy. And but I also got in early in the year, very early in 2024. All right. And I also got into Bitcoin in 2018. So when you look at it, I'm not saying go invest in the company. All I'm saying is let's just take a look at what's possible in terms of what this company could potentially be worth. And does it have any merit to be worth 10x, 20x, 30x, 40x? Like an Apple. And when I say 40x is earnings. But again, MicroStrategy from Bitcoin, there's not earnings because they're not selling their Bitcoin. They're holding their Bitcoin and their Bitcoin goes up in value, right? So what is it worth? That's something to throw in the comments of like, I don't know. But it's a good conversation to have and actually something to look at, because when we look at this strategy of what they're doing, to recap today, and then we'll close it out. When we look at what they're actually doing, they're brilliant with what they're doing. They hold Bitcoin in their treasure chest, right? I just say treasure chest for a simple example. So they hold Bitcoin in their treasure chest. 1, first company to do it, they hold the most. Number 2, they borrow money, they buy Bitcoin. So their treasure chest gets bigger. Number 3, they issue stock. They take the money that you give them, they buy more Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin is going to go up, as Michael Saylor talks about, on average of 29% per year over the next 21 years, let's say, and it's going up, could it be that MicroStrategy is going to be valued at a lot more than they're valued right now based on these 3 things: borrowing money to buy Bitcoin, issuing stock to buy Bitcoin, and the fact that they're holding this incredibly hard asset on their balance sheet? It's hard because it's hard to make more. There will only ever be 21 million, right? It's hard to hack because the security of the Bitcoin network is super secure, right? So it's a hard asset. And so we have this incredible asset that they're holding. We have the first company to ever do it, MicroStrategy. We have them leveraging, meaning borrowing money to buy Bitcoin. They have them issuing stock and taking that money to buy more Bitcoin, and they're holding on their balance sheet, and they're never going to sell it, and they're going to continue to hold it, and it might go up by 29% per year on average over the next 21 years. It's been going up by more on average over the last 4 years, over the last 8 years, over the last 12 years. Could there be something to this? And my answer is yes. Now, the full disclaimer on it is really simple. It's incredibly volatile. So if one's not comfortable with the volatility, I would never buy it to go, hey, I'm going to get into MicroStrategy and all of a sudden get out a week later. I wouldn't speculate on the price and be like, hey, I'm going to buy it at this point and give advice to somebody on that. I certainly look at things and I look at charts and I make my best informed decision of when to do it. And, I got knowledgeable on it. And I bought it super early in the beginning of the year and it's done very well. So you need to just look at it for yourself moving forward. Just get knowledgeable on it, right? And I just think that we are in a new age. We're in a digital age. And for us not to, number one, understand Bitcoin and to not to think that it's going to be, it already is a leading asset in the world, right? And to not think that it's going to be a leading asset moving forward is just crazy, right? Because we live in a digital world. So based on that, make your informed decision. I would continue to watch MicroStrategy and just watch it and observe it and see what you want to do with it. Maybe you just want to watch it and learn. But I think it's a cool case study to see that a company that's using basic principles that many companies have used over the years to borrow money, to issue stock, but they're just doing something a little bit different with it. They're buying Bitcoin with it. And to know that many companies have followed suit and are doing the same thing tells us that a lot of corporations, or some, I should say, not a lot, some corporations out there think it's a pretty good thing to hold it in their treasure chests. What do you think? Nation states, we have nations out there that are actually putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I think we'll have more in 2025 that are doing it. So do we think Bitcoin's going to go up over time? I do. Do I think Bitcoin's smart to hold over time? I do. Do I think MicroStrategy is super volatile? Absolutely. But do I think that Bitcoin is risky? Yeah. I think if you're looking to just buy Bitcoin now and you're going to just be like, hey, I'm just going to buy Bitcoin and I'm going to try and sell out at the right time, that there's risk to that. And I think if you hold Bitcoin long term, I think it's not risky to hold long term. I just don't think it's risky to hold long term. And that's my personal point of view. And the reason why I don't think it's risky to own long term is really simple. Like if the money supply is going up by 7% a year, you got to earn 7% on your investments just to break even. So where are you going to put your money? And that's the question you got to ask yourself. Where are you going to store your money so that the value of your money continues to go up? You're not going to store it in the dollar. You're not going to store it in bonds, right? You might put it in the S&P 500, but it's doing 14% a year on average. So what are you going to do with it? And I think that more and more people are going to be turning to Bitcoin. I think more and more nations are understanding Bitcoin. And I think more and more people are getting smarter about it. And I would actually look with a curious mind. I'm not going to say like totally open and drink the Kool-Aid and be like, MicroStrategy is the greatest choice in the world to do this thing. I'm not saying invest in it. I'm invested in it. I believe in it. I have some knowledge on it. I'm just saying watch it. Watch it. Could they be right? Well, certainly in their stock price last year where they went up 359%, they seem to be right over the last year. Certainly, Bitcoin went up 121% last year. Seems that Bitcoin seems like a pretty good thing that I would put my money in, and I have my money in it. So what are the options today? And again, like, I'm looking at it too of MicroStrategy. Like I believe we're going to have an 8-month run up in 2025. And I believe we're going to have just a boom back down. Like it's going to go up. And I believe there's going to be a point where it just goes back down. By how much? I don't know. But I do believe that'll happen. And it's happened in every bull run that we've had. We go up, we hit a top, and then boom, it crashes back down. Might it be different this time? Maybe, because we have large corporations holding it in their treasure chest. We have nations that look like they might be holding it in their treasure chest long term. So because we have larger players that seem to be holding it long term, might the up be high and then the down be less than it normally is? It could. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. But it's something to consider. And so in terms of like, if MicroStrategy continues to go up in 2025, will I look at taking some profits? Absolutely. As Bitcoin continues to go up in 2025, will I look at taking some profits? Yes. I don't know what I will do. I don't know how much I will do, but I will definitely look at it and I will probably take some profits. And I also think that like if somebody had the steel like conviction and like they didn't want to use that money for anything and they're like, hey, I don't want to use the money for everything. I have no desire to touch it. I think somebody could just hold on to it. And I think over 4-year periods, Bitcoin's going to go up and MicroStrategy is going to go up. And if you have that conviction and you can stomach the ups and the downs, then there's some people that will hold on to it. You got to have major conviction and you got to have a major stomach for it. Because if you never invested in Bitcoin before and you're looking at it for the first time and you all of a sudden see like a 10% drop, which many of us who've been in Bitcoin for a while are like a 10% drop, whatever, or you see a 15% drop, it's like, okay, whatever, right? My new muscle that I'm flexing to get ready and used to is MicroStrategy. When I look at my Bitcoin portfolio and it goes from 108,000, and it drops down to what? It's at 94 right now. I'm not like waking up going, oh my God, Bitcoin dropped. I'm not doing that at all. I don't have attention on it in a high degree. I have very, very, very slight attention on it. Just watching, is it going to go lower? What's going to happen? With MicroStrategy, I have a lot more attention on it because when it goes up, it goes up. When it goes down, that baby goes down, right? But what I'm sharing here is, are we watching a model for the first time ever in the history of the world where a company is putting something on their balance sheet, let's just call it their treasure chest or very simple terms, that is not like a T-bill or a bond that they're buying that goes up by 4%, right? Because if I'm a company and I got $1 billion sitting in my treasure chest, and I'm like, I'm going to put my $1 billion that's sitting in my treasure chest into something that's going to make 4%, I'm not going to feel really good about that as a company. I'm just not. So if you're them, just put yourself in their shoes, right? If you're a growing company who's willing to take some risks, because I understand a large companies like a Microsoft or an Apple, and they're looking at it and they're just crushing and they're so high above the curve that they're outproducing in such a massive way that if the money supply goes up by 7% per year, is it really affecting an Apple that much who's got a 41x multiple on their earnings from last year? I don't think as much, right? Because they've already climbed to the top of the mountain. But I'm not an individual is a large, I don't have a corporation. I have businesses, but they're not big like that. So if I'm looking at it as a business and I'm looking at it as an individual, as I'm looking at it as people like you and me, it's like, what should we be looking at? Like we may not be you might be at the top of the mountain and have a company that's making billions and billions and billions of dollars. And you look at a company like Apple, or you look at companies that are making $1 trillion, like their treasure chest is huge, man. Do they need to take a little bit of quote unquote risk, right? And take the risk on of the volatility to watch something go up and down and to answer to their shareholders when Bitcoin may go down next year or when it goes down 15% like it just did. Do they want to do that? Maybe they don't. But companies like MicroStrategy who did it, and then other companies that followed to do it, are like, hey, this is the future. And if I'm a growing, budding company that's making $1 billion a year, like MicroStrategy makes $500 million a year in their software company. If I'm a budding company that's making $100 million a year, if I'm making $2 billion a year, $3 billion a year, $4 billion a year, these up and coming companies are going to look at this because they're not going to work with their hard-earned money and put it in their treasure chest and go, let me earn 4%. Putting my money in T-bills or bonds. I just don't think that's the future. I just don't think there's any logical way that emerging companies that are coming up in a technological world, in a digital world, are going to look at their money and make decisions to get 4%. I just don't see it. And if you do, I mean, I'd love to hear your point of view on it. I don't see it, man. I don't. When I could have the option as a company to, let's say I'm not like MicroStrategy as a company, I'm not going to take, like they did in 2020, take $250 million and put it all in Bitcoin. I'm not saying that you have to do that or the company has to do that. But maybe they take some of their chest, their treasure chest, and like maybe we should put 10% of our treasure chest into Bitcoin. That's going up on average of what per year? 60% a year? Over time, will that level out and maybe go to 29, 30% per year? Yeah, but going up at 30% per year over time is better than 4% on putting your treasure chest money into bonds. I don't even see how there's even a competition, and I don't even see for an emerging company how there's even a conversation about it to be like, why wouldn't we do this? So maybe that is the conversation. Why wouldn't we do this? And I fully duplicate and understand why Michael Saylor did it in 2020 with his company. And if you go back and watch his interviews, go watch him. He talks about it. He says, hey, listen, like the government's printing money or the Fed's printing money, and the money supply is going up by 7% a year. As COVID hit, the money supply was going up by 14% per year. So that means that if the money supply is going up by 14% a year and they had $1 billion in their treasury, right? then at the end of 4 years, the money supply is going up by 14 per year. They lose more than half of their $1 billion to this invisible tax called inflation. So I could see why a company who's looking at that's going, man, I don't want to lose all the money in my treasure chest. We're printing so much damn money. And if I'm earning 4% per year, and during COVID, the money supply is going up by 14% per year, I'm losing 10%, man. So you can go watch his interview and look at why he did it, because to him, the bigger risk was like, if we just sit on this melting iceberg in cash or in bonds that's doing 4% and the money supply is going up that much, how do you even survive as a company? And that leads us to the question, as an individual, how do we even survive? How do we survive putting our money in bonds? How? Right? How do we survive putting our money making 10% a year? Because you're supposed to make 10% a year, and make 10% a year, you're doing well. No, you're not. You're just not. Look at the math. So, and maybe at 10%, you're just surviving, right? But like, one who wants to get ahead and thrive needs to start looking at Bitcoin, needs to start studying companies like MicroStrategy and saying, maybe is there something here? Let's play the devil's advocate and look at the other side and go, hey, what if Bitcoin just goes to freaking zero? Then a company like MicroStrategy goes out of business, right? Those of us who hold Bitcoin and have a lot of our net worth into Bitcoin, we then lose our money, right? But you know what? I think the probability of that happening, of Bitcoin going to zero, is very, 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 very unlikely. So I'm willing to bet on what I believe is a beautiful, beautiful place to store my money, being Bitcoin. And I love the fact that it's decentralized. The government doesn't control it. It's a beautiful concept. The values of just putting your money into this thing, like, but it just aligns with my values. It's a wonderful thing, right? I get to put my money into something that's decentralized. It's not controlled by the government. I think it's a wonderful thing. I get to put my money into something that's truly scarce. It's truly scarce. It's finite. There will only ever be 21 million. And I could say, yeah, that I could put my money into gold. Sure, I could put my money into gold. Gold is scarce, but it's not fully scarce. We're mining 2 to 3% more gold every year. So it's not truly scarce, right? The dollar's not scarce because we're printing more of that. Bonds aren't the place for the money because you're earning 4 or 5% in bonds, and we're printing 7% more money every year. So where do you actually put your money? So that's why I say, let's just explore. Let's look at Bitcoin. Let's understand it more. And let's study companies like MicroStrategy, which, if they have 3 different ways to make money and I got one, I kind of think I might put my money into a stock like MicroStrategy that has 3 different ways to increase the value of their Bitcoin. I kind of think that's a good thing, right? I just do. Conceptually, it makes sense to me. And if you're just joining us, I'm going to recap this finally with the final point here of, like, in the beginning of the video, I just did a simple example of, let's look at the 3 different ways conceptually. I'm not using actual numbers, just conceptually to make it simple. The 3 different ways that MicroStrategy has acquired Bitcoin and continues to acquire Bitcoin, and why they can accumulate and grow their treasure chest of Bitcoin faster than I can and faster than you can. So I'm like, if there's somebody out there who can accumulate and grow faster than I can, I would like to get in on a piece of that. And sure, is it volatile? Sure, is there risk associated with that? Absolutely. If you watched yesterday, the live that I was doing, I'm like, okay, let's look at how you would value a company, right? And we looked at MicroStrategy, and I said stability. I'm not going to check the box on that because it's not, there's not stability in the short term in this thing. No, because you could get in tomorrow and invest in it, and you could all of a sudden lose 30%. Hell, you could lose 30% in a week. Hell, it could drop 10% in a day like it has. But I'm like, I want to get ahead, and I want to continue to grow my wealth. And I want to look at a company that's filling their Bitcoin treasure chest faster than I'm filling mine. And if I think what they're doing is smart, man, Ecology says, like, MicroStrategy isn't levered enough. Love your point. They need to issue more convertible bonds. Very good point, right? When you say issue more convertible bonds, basically what I was saying earlier is they borrow money. That's what they do. They borrow money, guys. So 3 ways. 1, early on, MicroStrategy put their own money into Bitcoin. That Bitcoin went up. treasure chest grew. Number two, they went out and they said, loan me some money, right? Also known as convertible bonds over there, as Ecology Only is saying here in the chat box. So they said, loan me some money. So early on, they put $100 of their own money in, hypothetical, just like an example I'm using. It doubles. Let's say this year goes to 200, right? They go out and they borrow $100. It doubles, goes to 200 because they're borrowing people's money and they're using other people's money to fill their treasure chest with Bitcoin. And then number three, because they're a public company, they issue some paper, right? They're like, here, buy my stock. I give them $100 for the stock. They take that $100 and they put it into Bitcoin. So overall, in summary, why do I think it's a great company to study? Why do I own Microstrategy? Really simple. They put their own money in Bitcoin in the beginning, and their Bitcoin went up in value. They're now borrowing money from people because people believe in their stock and they're willing to loan them the money, and they're putting it into Bitcoin. Their treasure chest is getting bigger in a second way. And the third way is they issue stock because they're a public company, and they take the money, let's say $100 that you give them for the stock, and they fill their treasure chest with Bitcoin. I ain't doing that, man. Right? I'm not doing it. They're a company that's doing it. They have the resources, they have the power, they have the connections. I want a piece of it. I want a piece. And even if I wasn't like fully like understanding what was going on, I would make sure, how do I understand more? How do I understand more? How do I understand more about what they're doing? And like anything, I like to put a little bit of money into something initially to understand it because it makes it interesting for me to study. I'm not saying you invest it all. This is not financial advice, but that's what I like to do. So early on, back in 2020, I bought a little bit of Microstrategy. I started studying Saylor then, and I love what he's doing, and I believe in him, and I believe what he's doing. And some people think it's crazy what he's doing, and it's off the wall, and he's nuts. And some people say it's a Ponzi scheme. It's just not a Ponzi scheme. It just not is. It's not. It's not a Ponzi scheme. Okay? And the way that he's using leverage is no different than corporations and businesses and people have been using leverage since the last 100, 200 years. Are there people that go out and borrow money and buy something with it? Yeah. What do you think people do to go buy real estate? They go borrow some money and they buy some real estate. He borrows some money, buys some Bitcoin. Are there companies out there like an Apple or a Google where they go issue stock and they say, go buy my stock, and they take your money and they put it back into their company? The only difference is Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy is not taking your money that when you buy the stock and putting it back into the company per se. They're taking the money when they buy the stock and they're putting it into their treasure chest of Bitcoin. And that's the difference. And so people are looking at it and going, this doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand it. It's crazy what they're doing. It's because it's new. It's new. Right? The first person to do something on planet Earth, like the first time they ever do it, if we said, hey, we're going to go to the moon one day, and the first person who voiced that, people go, you're crazy. We're not going to the moon. We live here on Earth. That's insane. How are we going to get to the moon? Huh? And it's just like the idea when Bitcoin first came out, people are like, what the hell is this thing? I remember the first time I heard about it. I'm like, I heard about it before 2018 when I bought. Heard about it way before. I'm like, I don't even know what the hell this thing is. What are you even talking about? So the new thing comes out and it's not understood. And so now you have a company that's implementing age-old practices: borrow money, buy something, issue some stock, take the money, put it into something, age-old practices. But the difference is they're putting it into Bitcoin. And so if Bitcoin is misunderstood, then MicroStrategy will be misunderstood. And because MicroStrategy is the first company to put their money in their treasure chest, right? In their treasury, right? They're the first company to put money into the treasure chest. And the first corporation to do it. Of course, it's going to be like, what are they doing? This is weird. I don't understand it. They're the first ones. But as more and more companies follow, it becomes more and more understood. It becomes more and more talked about. And the more we talk about it, the more we can have conversations about it, and the more we understand it. And so I think at the end of the day, my message is, I was just saying, Clive, 359% is what it did last year. So my 359% that I put in the title here was not what I think it's going to do this year. 359% was what MicroStrategy did last year in 2024. Okay. And Bitcoin did 121%. So as we're looking into the future, what will it do? I just think that it is smart to get educated and understand what is MicroStrategy doing. I think it is smart to get educated and understand what is Bitcoin. And I think we as America, we around the world in different countries. I live in the US and all the countries in the world, because we have countries like El Salvador that have purchased Bitcoin. We have countries that have super high inflation. Argentina has high inflation. Venezuela has high inflation. They need to do something. They need to do something. I mean, in some of these countries, like their inflation is 60% or 100% a year. They don't have another option. Okay. So as we look into the future, what is going to be the greatest thing for planet Earth and all the countries on planet Earth? Is it going to be the dollar that is not backed by anything and you can print more of? And will the dollar continue to be a good medium of exchange? Sure. I go into McDonald's. I want to buy a cheeseburger. I want to go buy a Coke. I want to go buy a car. I'll go take out my dollars. I'll go buy it. Right. Sure. It's a good medium of exchange. I can exchange for products and services with my dollar. Great idea. Let's do it all day long. Dollar's still strong comparatively to other countries where their currencies, a lot of other countries are having a tough time with their currencies. So it's like over time, what do I see the future is going to be? That's the question I ask myself. 10 years from now, do I think my dollar is going to be worth less or more? I think it's going to be worth less. 10 years from now, do I think Bitcoin is going to be worth less or more? I think it's going to be worth more than it is today. So where am I going to put my money? My answer is simple. I've already put it in Bitcoin. And what kind of companies am I going to invest in? I'm going to invest in innovative companies that I believe are part of this digital landscape and future that we're involved in. And so digital money, like Bitcoin, is part of the digital future. So I'm going to be looking at companies like Microstrategy that hold digital money, quote unquote, Bitcoin, right, in their treasure chest. And I don't think like there's speculation that we're going to have like a, other countries are going to create their own digital currency. I mean, right now it pretty much is digital, guys. I mean, it's not like you walk around all of a sudden you just decide, hey, I'm going to pay you in dollars today. Very few people pay in dollars anymore. You're swiping things that are digital all day long. You swipe your credit card, it's digital, right? You send a wire from your bank, it's digital. So is there going to be any merit at all in a country creating their own digital currency? I don't think at all. Why? Because then you have the Fed or that country that can just press a button and print more of it or issue more of it. So is there any merit or value in that? I don't think any. So what will be the digital future of money? The answer is simple: Bitcoin. Okay. And do we ever have to use it as a medium of exchange where we walk in and we go pay for something with a Bitcoin? I don't think we ever have to use it as that. Might people do that? Yeah. I just think we use it as a place to store the value of our hard-earned money. And more importantly, to store the value of our hard work. We work really hard and we get paid money for it. Where do you want to store that value? The value that you put out into the world. You have value, you put it out into the world. Somebody pays you for that value. So the value that you're putting out into the world and you're getting paid for, where do you want to store that value? They pay you in dollars, but where do you want to store it? And I have a hard time to look at it and go that there's going to be any other smarter choice than Bitcoin. I don't see it, particularly with what's happening with companies like Tesla and AI and the future of technology, and the more advanced we're getting into technology in the digital age. I don't see a world where we don't have this digital platform, where we don't have this digital blockchain. I don't see a world where we don't have Bitcoin as the future. And maybe you have some ideas of what you see in 10 years into the future, 20 years in the future. What's it going to be? And I do see a world in the future where, like, some analysts who are smarter, and this is above my pay grade, they can come in and they can say, hey, what do we think MicroStrategy is really worth? But I do think you're going to need to look at the treasure chest and not say that MicroStrategy has 466,000 Bitcoin in their treasure chest right now, because that's what they have, and say that the value of MicroStrategy is only 466,000 Bitcoin. It's only what they have in their treasure chest. I don't think that is the way you value that company. You have to value it based on other factors. And so if you value it based on the other factors, you're going to see a stock price that into the future is going to dust where it's at now. And right now, at the time of this video, it's at 289. It closed at that on Friday. Could we open up Monday and it drops? Could it go down to 250? Could it go down to 220? Yeah. But do I think in 2025 we're going to see this thing soar? Yeah. Do I still think that we're going to see MicroStrategy at $800 in 2025? Yes. Do I think we could potentially get to 1,000 and 1,300 and even 1,600 in 2025? Yes. Am I telling you should invest your money into MicroStrategy now? No, I'm not. I'm just saying, check it out. Take a look. I'm not offering up anything on this podcast right now. I'm just sharing, hey, I just think it's a cool thing, man. Like, I call my friends excited. I'm like, yo, Like, let me tell you what I learned about MicroStrategy today. Let me share with you what I'm doing. Like, I remember I was talking about MicroStrategy early in the year, and my friends were like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I'm like, I'm telling you, I'm investing in this thing, man. I understand it. I'm going heavy into this thing. It was one of the smartest things I've ever done. So again, you have to look at where you're at. I'm not giving any investment advice, but I do think the first step towards anything is just knowledge. And I do think in looking at making decisions for the future, we look 10 years into the future and go, what's it going to be? Is the digital revolution that we're in right now going away? It's not. It's just not. If you were listening to me yesterday, you know, I saw this with my my business in 2013, 2014, where I was like, okay, the world's going online. The world's already online, but how do I get my business online? And so when I started to bring my business online, where selling my products online, which I'm not going to go into now because I'm not trying to promote my products to you, but when I started to take my business online in 2013, 2014, and then I really started to get the hang of it in 2016, and my stats started to boom heavy, right? By going online, it was just a simple thing. It was like very easy. It's a very simple thing to access. I can get on the computer in the morning and access my business. I don't have to walk to a meeting and shake somebody's hand to actually do business. Speed, because that gives me speed. Not only can I access it quickly, but it gives me speed because I can get on and I can do a Zoom call with somebody, or I can launch one of my, my digital marketing. We call it a sales funnel that literally just sells my products 24/7, 365. So I can launch that, and it's completely automated, and it sells and sells and sells and sells and sells. I've been doing that for the last 10 years. Where every day I wake up and every hour there's more and more sales coming into my business. So I was looking at, okay, automation's getting more real. The digital world's getting more real. Back in 2013, you could look at me and go, this guy's a technology idiot. He's a marketing idiot when it comes to the digital world. And I was, man. I didn't know anything. And I'm still not a technology guy. I'm not. The mechanism, the mechanics of how it works. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm going to tell you everything about your iPhone or how the computer works. I'm not. I understand the concepts of things, and when I get to understand the concepts of things, I do it, and I tell my team, hey, we're going all in on this thing. And so back in 2013, 14, I'm like, the world's digital, man. I'm behind the game right now. But I did see that a lot of businesses back in 2013, 14, as I started getting online, a lot of businesses in my space, smaller businesses, right, making millions of dollars, were not actually online yet. And we're not succeeding online. But I'm like, this is where the wave is going. And I can't see the future of business without it being digital. And like, if I'm not digital in 2013, 2014, I'm handicapped. Really, I can't do the things that I could do that everybody else can do. I'm like trying to do work and I got two hands behind my back and I'm like, and I'm trying to do work and I'm trying to type with my nose. I can't do that. And so it's like, I always joke around. I used to call it the Fred Flintstone era back there. I'm like, well, the rest of us are getting in a rocket ship and going online. And there's people out in the world that are still going to work in the yabba dabba do with their feet in the Flintstone car and they're pedaling to work. Like, how do you compete with a rocket ship? And that's the digital world, right? So much like when I was looking at my business in 2014, 2015, thank God I went online. And when COVID hit in 2019, I was already online. So I was able to take advantage of that. I wasn't first learning what a Zoom call was, or I wasn't learning like, what is an online business? I knew what it was in 2019. In fact, my business was booming in 2019. Okay. So we were already booming big in 2019. So when COVID hit, it just accelerated it. Right. So at that point in 2019, I started to look at money. I'm like, so if businesses are going online and the US is printing money, where's the future of money going? And so that's when I really started to take a look into it. I'd already owned Bitcoin in 2018. I had bought mining equipment in 2018, for crying out loud. I didn't even know what I was buying. It just sounded, the concept of owning mining equipment sounded good. So I went in, I put money into mining equipment. I invested in it with a guy. I put like $100 grand into it. I bought the mining equipment with this guy and we started mining some Bitcoin, right? And so I started getting my first Bitcoin through, I think my first Bitcoin ever was through mining equipment. And then I started buying Bitcoin also when it was around the $3,000, $4,000 price point. So when you look at that, I just had the concept of knowing of like, this is interesting technology, man. And being a guy who I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the technology guy. Back in 2014, I thought I was the dumbest marketer in the room because compared to all my friends, I was. But I was like, damn it, I'm going to get in the game and I'm going to learn this thing. And I was like, it's not too late. Even though the internet came back out in the 90s and businesses could be online back in the 90s, right? Still, at the end of the day, like businesses in 2014, 2015, the smaller businesses weren't online yet. So what is this a metaphor for? Well, if you look at money in the same way, in terms of a metaphor, they're not the same thing. But if the first real digital money came out in 2008 with Bitcoin, and we're already what? That makes we're 16, 17 years in. We're only 17 years in. And it's still only what? If you look at the price of Bitcoin today, a $2 trillion asset, might be less than that. Do you think that we're going to go from $2 trillion in market cap with Bitcoin higher? Do you think? Listen, man, like I got a hard time thinking that we're not. I can't even fathom the idea that we wouldn't. But I'm throwing it out there just so I can look at the other point of view and go, yeah, it's possible. Maybe we won't have the future where it's we have quote unquote, I'm just saying digital money for simple purposes, digital money, right? So maybe we won't. Maybe we won't. But looking into the future, if I forecast my future, do I think things will get more and more digital? Yes. Do I want more and more speed? Yes. Do I want more and more power? Yes. Do I want more and more access? Yes. I wanted all those things in my business. I want all those things in my money now. Right? So if I want all those things in my business and they're already happening, whether you proactively adopt it or not, you should proactively adopt these things. You're eventually going to have to reactively adopt it. So for me, when I was looking at my business back in 2014 and going digital online with my business, I was starting to be at the point, it's like, if I don't proactively adopt running a business online, which is why I can be anywhere in the world. I'm in California right now. This is a real background. You can see the Hollywood sign in the back. So I'm in California right now. Last 2 years, I was in Florida. I could pick up my business in a minute, move anywhere in the world, run it from anywhere in the world, have my employee and my staff all over the world, people in the Philippines, people in London, people wherever, have a sales team selling wherever, and be completely digital, have total access, total power, total speed, total flexibility. And a moment's notice, if COVID hits like it did in 2019, boom, not skip a moment of operations, even though I ran a seminar company for years and years and years and still do seminars. But at that point in 2019, 5%, maybe 10% of my revenue was from my seminar company. And all we had to do with our in-person seminars, I'll never forget, people flew from all around the world to my seminar right before COVID. We were literally the last seminar. It was on a Sunday, last seminar allowed in California at the time. And after my seminar on that Sunday, everything shut down and you couldn't hold conferences anymore. Okay. And so boom, when it shut down, my business was already online. So my seminar business, we just took it online, the other 10%, and we continued to flourish. So again, we as a nation, as a world, as a planet, we're either going to proactively adopt the things that are coming down the pike, or eventually reactively, you're going to adopt it. But either way, it's going to be adopted. And that's just my point of view on it. So as we look into the future, is it too late? I don't think it's too late at all. Just like when I went digital in my business in 2013, 2014, I thought it was too late. Heck no, I wasn't too late at all. Just like Bitcoin now in 2025, January 1st, is it too late for people to get in? Heck no, I don't think it's too late. Am I saying invest in it now? I'm not saying invest. I'm just giving knowledge and a point of view. So is it too late? I don't think so. And if you look at even Saylor's projections, who's the founder of Microstrategy, he projects that in 21 years, which would be 2045, he was projecting this back in 2024. So he was saying in 2045, we will be at $13 million of Bitcoin. Is that hard to fathom, $13 million of Bitcoin? Yeah, maybe in present time right now, you go, oh my God, Bitcoin's at $93,000. How are we ever going to get to $13 million of Bitcoin? It's only a 29% growth rate per year. That's all it is. That's all it is. So 29% growth rate with an asset that has the history of growing at a much higher rate per year when you look at any 4-year period, is it impossible to think that we would have a $13 million Bitcoin, as Saylor says, in 2046? I don't know, or 2045. I don't know. Let's make up our own minds on it. Maybe it goes up at 20% a year over time. Then what would it be? Take a look at those numbers. So I think it's the future. I think the future's here now. It's here now. I don't think we're too late. Again, I bought Bitcoin at 3,000. I bought Bitcoin at 10,000. I bought Bitcoin at 20,000. I bought Bitcoin at 25,000. November last year is the last time I bought Bitcoin in 2023. I bought a bunch more Bitcoin when it was at $30,000. I even bought Bitcoin in 2020 when it was at the top at 60 something thousand dollars. Okay. Am I continuing to buy Bitcoin right now? No. Will I continue to buy in the future? Maybe. Did I start buying MicroStrategy early this year? Yes. Very early, like the beginning of the year, February. Yes. And so I started putting my money in MicroStrategy early this year. So what are we going to do in the future? Is it too late? I don't think it's too late. Has MicroStrategy hit a top? Will it get above $289? I don't know. We'll see in 2025 what's going to happen. My bet is that it's going beyond $289. My bet is that it's going beyond its all-time high last year, which was $479 in the regular markets. After markets, it went up to $530. So do I think we're going to go beyond $530 next year? Yep. Do I think we're going to go beyond $800 next year with MicroStrategy? Yep. And in a bullish case, do I think we're going to hit 1,000 or 1,300? Yes, in a bullish case. So we'll see. Could I be right? I hope I'm right for my sake and anybody else who owns it right now. Could I be wrong? Sure. But that's the whole point of making decisions in life, right? You make them and you learn. You make them and you learn something from it. Okay. And I learned a lot by investing back in Bitcoin in 2018. Did I make mistakes? Absolutely. Heck, when we bought mining equipment back in 2018, I didn't even know what I was buying. I was like, this sounds really good. The concept and the numbers and the math looked amazing. I didn't even know what was going on, right? I was just like, this sounds pretty cool. The numbers look good. This sounds like an innovative concept. Let's do it. So we did. It didn't last very long because we didn't know what we were doing. But I think we mined at that point in 2000. We mined some Bitcoin. Let's just say we mined some Bitcoin in 2018, right? We definitely mined some Bitcoin. So anyway, you look at things, you do some things. Eventually, the mining equipment that we bought, the guy that I was with who was running it, he was like, yeah, I'll run the whole operation thing. And like, you just invest the money. So I invested the money into it. And then I didn't understand it. So I didn't understand like the cost of things and like you were going to have a bill every month associated with the mining equipment and like how that actually worked. I'm like, what is this bill thing? And he's like, we can't afford to keep the lights on. Like that was his metaphor with this thing. It's getting too high. And it actually wasn't a big investment. Had I just known what it was, I would have been like, hey, here's the monthly check for it. Let's keep the lights on. But we learned we didn't keep the lights down. After about a year and a half of mining, we shut it down. And but we mined some Bitcoin and Bitcoin went up and it was a good thing. Would I have held on to that mining equipment? Would I have kept doing it and learned more about it? Yes, but I made some mistakes, right? So buying Bitcoin in 2020, buying at the top, would I buy at the top again? I don't know. Michael Saylor buys at the top all the time. I'm not a corporation. I'm not sitting on $42 billion worth of Bitcoin in my corporation. So I'm going to make some different decisions. Am I buying at the top right now? No. Might I buy in the future? Yeah. So anyway, hope it serves you. I hope you like the simple example of what MicroStrategy is doing and why I think they're going to go up next year. I'd love to hear your point of view. James says it's not too late. I agree with you, James. I don't think it's too late. I mean, even in the concept and idea that we might one day have $1 million Bitcoin. And look at a bunch of the predictions. If you go study some resources online and look at some of the predictions, there's many people that are calling for $180,000 Bitcoin out there next year. Do I think we'll see 150? Yeah. Do I think it's possible to see 200? Yeah. So I would say like my conservative prediction for Bitcoin next year, I would say is 150. Does that mean that that's like the minimum? Like if it's a bearish case, it's 150. Now I would just say like conservatively, I would just say I think we'll hit 150. And then I think in my bullish case, we're 200. And maybe we go beyond 200, but I want to hype it up and go, we're going to go to 500,000 Bitcoin. We could. It's possible. I'm just going to say 200,000 is my bullish case on this. MicroStrategy, I go look at the math. If you want to actually follow somebody who does the math really well, go see James Invest Answers. He does the math incredibly well on this, and he's got a whole spreadsheet that talks about if Bitcoin goes to X, then MicroStrategy will go to Y. So if Bitcoin goes to $150,000, he has a prediction there based on pure math of what MicroStrategy would go to. If Bitcoin goes to 200,000, what would MicroStrategy go to? So go follow James Invest Answers. Check out what he's doing. He does the math extraordinarily well. Okay. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Again, not financial advice. This is just me sharing some ideas and concepts and sharing what I think about the future. And I think it's a pretty cool thing to be involved in Bitcoin. I think it's a pretty cool time we're living in. I think it's a pretty cool thing that Microstrategy is doing. I think it's a pretty cool thing that we're all here learning together and discovering new things. As we all discover new things, I think it's good to share with our friends and help our family out and our friends. And I think it's also really cool to pass on good news, in a world where there's not been a lot of good news during COVID. I think it's important to pass along good news, whether you believe it's true or not. If you think it's good for people and you think it will help them, pass along good news and be like, hey, check this out. I'm studying this right now. What do you think? And have a discussion with somebody, have some coffee and talk about it, So hope this serves you. See you on the other end. I'll be doing more and more shows like this and talking about stuff like this. So if there's anything you want to talk about, feel free to throw it in the chat box. Happy to entertain anything. And hope you have a great new year. Hope you create some big goals for the new year and wrote down your goals. Dream big. Why the hell not? What the heck? Have some big goals for the new year. What happens if you stretch your goals by 5x and you land at 2x? Like, you'd still be happy, right? So dream big. I think there's lots of good hope coming into 2025. I feel like there's been a weight lifted off the world, and it's kind of like, wow, you can feel the world's getting less heavy now, and there's excitement for 2025. And I hope that you all win extremely big in 2025. And I hope that those of you who are in Bitcoin, I hope it works out great for you. Those of you who are in MicroStrategy, I hope it works out great for you. And those of you who have companies or are working in careers, and I hope your families do well and they prosper. And I hope every aspect of your life prospers in 2025. All right. Have a good one. See you on the flip side. And again, take what I say with a grain of salt, do all your fact checking, and form your own opinion. Form your own opinion. I think the greatest thing we can do is all have our own opinions and make our own decisions. So hope it serves you. See you soon. Yeah, Barry, I'm going to put one more thing. I was about to click off here, but I just want to answer your question, Barry. Barry, if you go back and watch the beginning of this video, why there's no correlation between the Bitcoin price and the MicroStrategy price, can you explain how we trust MicroStrategy stock will even go up if Bitcoin does? Just go watch the beginning of the video. It kind of gives you an idea of what's going on, and how they're going up at a rate that's higher than Bitcoin. It explains it, and go watch it, and I think you'll understand it. And as you see that the company functions in a different way because you have an individual controlling it, obviously they're making decisions and functioning at different times in different ways than Bitcoin, right? So when Michael Saylor decides that he's going to go borrow money to buy some more Bitcoin, he's making a decision that's going to influence perhaps what happens with the stock's price. When MicroStrategy, when Michael Saylor came out with the $42 billion plan and said, we're going to buy over the next 3 years, 42 billion Bitcoin, 21 billion, we're going to borrow money to buy it, 21 billion, we're going to issue stock to buy it. When he did that, the sentiment in the marketplace went way up for the stock, and people are like, wow. And people believed, like, wow, this is going to be incredible because they're going to own a lot of Bitcoin. So more and more people from their own sentiment and feelings started buying into MicroStrategy. That just, to me, is a observation. I don't have the statistical data on that, but I do know when that happened and they came out with their plan, you saw the stock fly up. And then also don't forget that Michael Saylor is issuing more stock, and he's issuing more stock. And when he issues more stock temporarily, that influences the stock price. And because it does dilute the shares temporarily when he does that. So he issues more stock and he takes the money and buys more Bitcoin. So those are things that are influencing the price. And so if you go watch the beginning of the video, it'll share with you why MicroStrategy is going up higher than Bitcoin from my point of view. And if you look at the data, last year they went up 3x to what Bitcoin went up. So Bitcoin 129% or 121%, MicroStrategy 359. So if you go look at it conceptually, you can get why it's happening. And if you go look at the moves that a founder of the company and the people who control the company are making, they're obviously influencing what's happening to their Bitcoin. So it's not going to move per se, from my point of view, in exact lock and step with the way that Bitcoin moves. And as you looked at it over the last year, it hasn't. We've seen times where Bitcoin's holding steady and MicroStrategy is going down, 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 down. That's been happening over the last couple of weeks. And now I'm not saying that Bitcoin's holding steady at 108, but Bitcoin went down from 108 to 94, and MicroStrategy went down a lot more, right, in terms of percentages. So just go check it out, watch the beginning of the video. I hope it helps you. See you on the flip.